I'm going to ask Provost Alva to join me for a part of this presentation because we just want to make sure that you understand what the questions are before us as a university. One of the things that I was told early on in my administrative career with my first role as dean is that one of the major challenges for any leader is to make sure we are asking ourselves the right questions. And certainly I think that that continues to be an opportunity for all of us to share in answering those questions. I want to give you brief highlights from each of the divisions and then talk about the work that has taken place as a result of your efforts and the leadership in the colleges and in the departments. You are probably aware, because many of these things were in place before I arrived, that we have several construction projects that will be getting underway this summer. The first is the new Student Services Building, which is currently the Pointy Building, as the students refer to it, or the CLA Building. That means that we are going to take what is currently Parking Lot C and begin the construction for that, the Student Services Building. I have asked for there to be a plan that we will roll out to the campus, a parking and transportation plan, because we will need to know how to navigate around the construction that is certainly getting underway. The student services, the housing for freshmen will probably begin in another year or two. We're still in the process of okaying plans, and we have asked that the original concept, which was to be a 2 or 3 story housing, that we move that towards higher floors, so 6 to 7, because we wanted to make sure that given the space that had been allocated, that we maximize that space. And so rather than 4 buildings spread out, we're probably looking at 2 buildings in the first phase. So a lot of that is being reworked, and we're very pleased with the engagement of all parties in thinking about what student housing will look like in the future. By the way, I've been spending evenings visiting the residence halls, and I can clearly see why we need new student housing. And some of the civil engineering students have especially pointed out certain construction challenges in these residence halls. And so if I needed to be convinced that this was something that we needed to do, I certainly was convinced seeing things that they pointed out to me. As you know, we had received in the governor's budget last year the opportunity to take possession of Lanterman, and we have requested that that decision be on hold for another year, because we need to do the appropriate amount of due diligence. We had the Historical Preservation Society to come in and give their assessment, and as a result of that, we need to make sure that we don't disadvantage the university long term. And so we will begin to work with potential developers to just help us think through what ifs. And that, again, has to be informed by the academic mission. We are also going to be working with, as Dr. Quillian entered this process. He's identified the Urban Land Institute, and they are going to come and give us, again, some preliminary ideas about the use of that property. So we have asked that the CSU system request a one-year extension with the Department of Finance. So again, that we don't, as much as we would certainly like to see these additional 300 and some acres a part of our overall footprint, we need to make sure that we, as I said, 40, 50 years from now, that we are not putting the campus in an untenable situation. In terms of student affairs, enrollment services opened the one-stop center, which is located on the second floor of the CLA building, and this is allowing students to visit one office where they can get information about admissions and grad checks and financial aid and tuition fee payments. But we're also going to begin looking at an integrated technology system where all of this will come up online for students to handle a lot of things in place in their homes 24 hours. And again, it's a great work that has gotten underway, but ultimately we want to continue moving where it is appropriate to a paperless environment. The Spring Career Fair, some of you may have had a chance to see all of the visitors we had on campus. In fact, we had the highest participation ever over the last 10 years. We had more than 230 companies come, and I had a chance to engage with some of those companies, and they continue to reiterate the excitement they have about employing our students or providing internships for our students. And certainly much of that has to go to the work of the faculty in preparing them for beyond, what I call beyond Cal Poly Pomona. For Bronco Athletics, I'm proud that all 10 teams and several individuals have or will qualify for postseason competition. And I've also been very pleased with the GPAs of the teams, and so I want to give kudos to the entire athletic department in their support and commitment to scholar athletes. In terms of advancement, I'm proud to say that we have over 3,900 donors this year, and it's especially encouraging that nearly half are loyal donors of 3 years or more. We're continuing in the respective colleges and units to work with very loyal alums as well as corporate partners who are, again, very respectful of the work that we do here and certainly want to do whatever they can to help extend that. So we expect to meet our year-end target of raising $20 million, much of that, again, in planned giving, some gifts, and then some in endowments. The foundation is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year, and certainly many of you know about the impact of the foundation in terms of additional funding that allows us to do such things as providing more student scholarships, building improvements, housing and dining, student jobs, and certainly our public-private partnerships. Without those public-private partnerships, we would not have the additional revenue that's needed to fund many of the things that are core to our academic programs. I was in the residence hall last evening, and so the students were telling me about some of the safety equipment that they needed for some of the programs, as well as, I guess there is a concrete canoe that they want to take me out on, and I don't know if that's good or not, but I said I'm game, so we will see. But again, we recognize that the foundation provides additional kind of support that really helps to supplement the many of the activities for our academic programs as well as student clubs. Let me just briefly share with you about new leadership. Leah Jernigan from Cal State Fullerton will be joining us July 1st as the new Vice President of Student Affairs. We'll be very pleased to welcome her here. And I want to take a moment. I don't see Kathy here in attendance, but there will be another occasion to honor and recognize Kathy for her willingness to step in and serve in this important interim role this past year. She will resume her role as the Associate Vice President for Enrollment Management, which will move to Academic Affairs Division in July. We hope that we will soon be able to announce the new Vice President for Administrative Affairs once the details are finalized. And I do see Dr. Quillian here, so I do want to take a moment to thank him for providing his expertise to our campus, and certainly wish him well in his next chapter. The fact that he brings not only campus-based experience, but system-based experience has been so invaluable for us. Teresa Mendoza is joining us for the next couple of months. She is, again, out of the Chancellor's office and is serving in the interim role for university advancement. As you may or may not know, Chief of Staff Gary Hamilton has been assuming that role. As I shared with Gary, it's in the fine print, other duties as assigned. And so I know that he was so pleased to have Terry come and fill in. She was at San Diego State for a number of years. She was also at Arizona State, and so she brings a wealth of experience in terms of university advancement and has served on national panels around advancement infrastructure. We will get the search underway. I've asked the Senate exec to appoint the members before the end of this academic year so that we will, in September, immediately undertake the search. The search consultant will be over the summer identifying individuals. We expect to have that person in place by the end of the fall quarter. I also want to take a moment to thank the provost and her staff for the continued advancement and engagement around so many issues that confront us, not only student success, but also what will we do without semester conversion. It is something that, again, so many folks have made this work, and I want to commend the committees and again the provost's office and the provost herself for coming in and really helping to support and provide leadership where needed. Certainly, we have, and who's counting, but we have 2 years to go. And we are in lockstep with East Bay, and so we are working in partnership. We've also heard from LA and Bakersfield. As you know, they were in the first cohort, and so they are well prepared to launch in fall, and so I think that we will be able to continue learning from their experiences. I also need to commend the faculty for converting and developing curriculum for the semester calendar, and I especially want to thank the Senate. You have been able to work through, when you think about the number of courses and ways of streamlining the process and really helping to make sure that we are on track, is just incredible. Unfortunately, I've had firsthand experience with this process while at Bakersfield. And so I really do have an understanding of what this means and how essential and thoughtful the work is, and at the same time recognizing that so many other elements intersect with the curriculum. So it's not just having the curriculum and then being able to offer, but there's a whole infrastructure that has to be built around that. And so with Lena and others, I want to, again, thank you for your leadership and support. And let me just note some of the accomplishments. You've reviewed 345 GE courses, 74 of which have been approved to date. Review of about 150 majors, options, and minors, 26 of which have been approved to date. Developing the academic and summer calendars for semesters, finalizing master's degree structure under the semester calendar, developing a definition, that in itself, a definition of class time, modules, and final exam schedules. We know that there is so much behind that short statement. We can't even begin to unfold what it has taken to get us to this point. In addition, at least 18 policies are also being reviewed at this time. And let me just say that certainly as we move to semester, that is very much underlies the necessary steps of not only we're going to be in semesters, but what are the implications of that for policies, and do we need to, is this an opportunity to streamline, is it an opportunity to rethink? Was it, when the policy was first established, it was on one set of conditions, and do those same conditions exist? And so we know that will be a continued analysis and process. Courses and programs are undergoing revision by Academic Affairs and the Senate, and some have already been approved. Departments are finishing course conversion guides and will also develop bridge and gap courses, because as I've met with the students in the evenings, that's particularly the freshmen, they want to know, well, will there be a problem if I came in under quarters? Am I going to be disadvantaged? And that's one of the things that we must commit to the students, that you will, as long as you follow the plan and that we can get the information out to them as early as possible, that they will be, and we will be considered of them staying on track. One of our top priorities is that smooth transition, and the key to that is student advising. And so my planner is being used to guide students to graduate on time, whether it's in quarters or semesters. Spring is also a time of college-based student forums, and these have already been scheduled. In fact, I was very excited to hear about how ASI has looped into this work and helping to get the message out. I'm also pleased that our campus and the students are using summer quarter as an opportunity to address pent-up demand for bottleneck courses. All of our planning and hard work is to facilitate the timely graduation for our students. I typically, as I meet with them, I ask them how many are going to summer school, and I'm just amazed at the number that say, yes, I'm going to enroll in summer school. And as you may have heard yesterday, we, at the piece with the president, we do have some financial aid available for students, and so it's really important that we do whatever we can to support that. We'll continue to need to look at the policies and procedures that have unintended negative impacts on our students. One example, a student, and again, I'm not sure whether this is completely accurate, but at least it's as accurate from the standpoint of students' perceptions, that at the end of the first year, they have to declare a major, that they feel like they will no longer be able to stay at the university if they've not declared a major by the end of that first year. Now, they've applied for majors, but they won't know until July. So the question they have asked me is, well, am I going to be kicked out, or do I need to apply for more than one major because if I don't hear from? So we've got to look at, again, if this is in fact in the minds of students, we've got to look at ways in which we integrate these decisions and communicate with the students. Again, they may have had one piece of the information and not the whole puzzle, but that's, again, opportunities for us to engage with them. We want to have a greater focus on admissions and enrollment, as certainly they have a direct impact on our budget, how our colleges operate, our ability to plan, and even in our ability to hire faculty. It is important that we understand our goals, we set the appropriate enrollment targets, and we work towards those targets. And the strategic planning that is underway, as well as the academic master planning initiatives, will be critical to defining our future goals. We cannot afford to be under-enrolled, and we must ensure that our colleges and our departments continue offering and engaging with the students, and that we link, again, what happens in enrollment management with what happens in the colleges and the academic programs. For example, last year, we enrolled more transfer students than in years past. So we had a higher demand for upper division courses than we anticipated, and therefore less demand for GE courses. And this especially impacted our College of Science and class. So again, we've got to connect what we do in enrollment management with what the impacts will be for our academic programs. It is certainly a complex puzzle, and it's important for all of us to gain a greater understanding of it. And in the fall, we will have sessions with the faculty so that you're aware of exactly what the implications are for any actions that we take. I'm going to stop here for a moment and ask the provost to join me, and she will be sharing very briefly an example of the type of documents that we're preparing so that all faculty will have this information. Departments will be able to use it.
Should I use the hand microphone? There's a table that's circulating, that's finding its way around this forum, and I'll try to be succinct in my comments. We, as the president indicated, we will be bringing enrollment services over to academic affairs in July. In anticipation of that move, and really in response to feedback that we have gotten from the campus in total, we've been working very intentionally to be much more transparent about the role of targets in scheduling and in how resources are distributed to the colleges, including faculty lines. And the deans and I have been in deep conversations about this very issue. What I'm circulating here is a summary of our goals, our enrollment goals for next year. And I'd like to walk you through it and invite you at your leisure to digest it further, but want to point out that in Table 1, what you have in Table 1 in the highlighted area are our goals for this coming year. The system office will fund us at, when you get to the point of your life where you need glasses, I'm there, folks. We need 18,494. We will be funded for 18,494 resident students. And our goal will be to bring in 19,428. In total, we look to have full-time equivalent students of 20,399. And so if you're wondering where those additional students are coming from, they're basically the non-resident students. We don't get funding for non-resident students from the system allocation. We do get their fees, but they're not part of the CSU allocation. But we still know that those students exist in our programs and have to plan for them. So we use 20,399 or 20,400 as our planning figure. And if you go to the right-hand side of Table 3, that gives you a distribution by college of how those 20,400 students will show up in each of the colleges if our model is true as we are planning it. One of the very important observations that we have to make are in Table 2. We are going to be enrolling a much larger class this coming fall compared to last fall, but more in alignment with fall of 2014. That's really important because if you are a college or if your college serves first-time freshmen, you need to anticipate that there are going to be more incoming freshmen looking for those GE service courses and the portal courses into your lower division curriculum. Similarly, you'll see that we are looking to also increase the number of transfer students as well. And so the class in general, both at the freshman and the transfer level, will be bigger this year than it was compared to last year. And then Table 4 and Table 5 is just a summary by head count, actual students. Doesn't consider whether they're full-time or part-time, but just head count. And it gives you a pretty quick glimpse of who are the colleges that tend to serve the undergraduates and those that are serving the graduate or the post-baccalaureate students. We will be continuing to develop these college targets by beginning to include departmental targets. So at the end of the day, we look at the college targets, but within targets, we're going to be asking the deans and the associate deans to assist us in tracking the sub-targets at the department level. So this is, you will begin seeing these tables with greater frequency, and we'll be monitoring both how the incoming class is doing, which is Table 2, and then looking at how that's playing out in terms of our targets, which is the yellow portions on this report.
And let me just tell you that what we're going to do, and we will have opportunities in the fall to begin to work with the colleges and the departments so that you understand clearly what's behind this and the implications for the budget. I'll be, again, meeting with the Senate Budget Committee and going over these and other tables so that there is a recognition that, as mentioned in 2015-16, our budget was affected by the fact that we did not have the enrollment that we had planned for. And so and part of this was due to the fact that you may recall that the UC decided at the last minute that they were now going to admit more students. Well, many of the students that that are interested in us are also interested in UC Irvine and interested in UC Riverside. And so we expected the students to come to Cal Poly. We planned for that, but they distributed across other universities in this area. And so that means that, again, we recognize that enrollment management isn't a per se a science, but there is modeling that we need to do such that we understand that for ever X, it requires Y. And so I think that, again, it's an opportunity for all of us to understand and help us think through and look at the implications of this. This will be especially as we go forward into the semester system. Let me just say, in terms of other areas that we worked on this past year. As you know, when I arrived at Cal Poly Pomona, we were focusing on faculty equity. As a campus, we were limited in what we can do specifically to current salaries, but the issue of equity was one that we could and needed to address. And so we worked with the CFA to develop a framework for a campus-based salary equity program in which eligibility was based on a number of factors. For assistant and associate professors, faculty were brought to the CSU average for their discipline and rank. For full professors, the CSU averages and years of service were factors in determining the amount of the equity increase. In all, we had about $1.2 million that was allocated for our faculty equity program, which affected about 323 individuals, of which 73% were tenure track or tenured faculty. And you've probably seen the website that has been prepared. So if you want to get more details about how that was handled. We also looked into staff salaries and discovered that 55 of our staff members were paid less than $15 an hour. And many of them had been working on the campus for over 10 years. And so we raised all of the employees to a base minimum of the $15 an hour or $31,200 per year. And this especially affected many of our staff that have been working here 19, 20 years, the janitorial staff. I'm also pleased that the CSU and the CFA came to an agreement and that a strike was avoided. I know we all certainly celebrated that. Fair and equitable faculty salaries are important issues across our system. And again, I want to acknowledge the work of the CFA chapter headed by Dr. Dorothy Wills. We're also anticipating the implications of the salary increases for faculty, as well as what we call the good faith or the Me Too clauses in other union contracts. So whenever there is a settlement or agreement with CFA, the other unions automatically receive that same percent. And so we're now waiting. We don't know what the exact figures will be. The Chancellor's Office is going to be identifying what portion of the combined, both the CFA as well as the other unions, what portion will campuses have to contribute. And so that means that we're going to be in a wait and see mode for the next couple of months. We hope that we will know certainly by the end of this fiscal year. We're going to continue to examine the salaries for our lecturers here on the campus and other areas of concern that are associated with our lecturers. In addition, we will be taking a close look at the number of tenured track faculty. I know that in 2007-8, which is just at the beginning of the recession, there were 628 tenured track faculty. Then that number went to 549, and we are currently conducting 58 searches for tenure track faculty, which will bring us up to 597. So we're looking forward to greeting the new faculty in the fall. We don't yet know what that will, what this will mean, again, until we get the, from the Chancellor's office, the implications of the union agreements. We don't yet know what that will mean in terms of going forward for future or for next year's searches. We haven't come together on that yet. Let me just, a few final things. It's very important that we continue to invest in the development and advancement of our faculty and staff. And so next year we're going to be shifting current resources that are within administrative affairs to gather the employees into a new unit as appropriate. Again, the employees like in labor relations and learning and development and training into a unit on talent development and employee engagement. We need to continue reducing silos here at our university and maximize our potential and make sure that we are able to engage with our employees from the time they are recruited to the point at which they leave or retire from the university. We also plan to formalize and integrate our institutional risk management units. We have those distributed again across various areas, but we need to have an integrated institutional risk focus, and that means bringing together risk management, environmental health and safety, emergency management, business continuity, as well as training. We know that we have lab technicians, and we want to bring them together just to help us figure out what new training do they need, what support do they need, and how do they connect with the broader institutional infrastructure. I've mentioned in terms of the moving of enrollment services to academic affairs. We've also moved university police and parking and transportation to the Vice President for Administrative Affairs. This again supports our goals of aligning the units with the appropriate divisions and creating a more integrated structure. I've oftentimes referred to this as the gray year. You know, we're very comfortable when it's black and white, but this has been a year of the gray. And it is oftentimes the gray where the best learning occurs, but also where the most anxiety occurs. And so what we're planning to do is begin to put things in place that have been kind of opened, because it's an opportunity for all of us to take a look, again, ask the questions that need to be answered. I want to commend the Senate, especially, and the Senate exec and our chair for your support, your partnership, as well as your responsiveness to these activities. As you may recall, when I first started, I said that I would be undertaking listening tours. I am still on that path. So far, I have probably met with about close to 75 academic units and departments, as well as the cultural centers, the residence halls, and have had, it's been my pleasure to talk to nearly 800 people. I've not finished yet. We have finished the academic programs, but now this summer I'll be moving out and continuing to connect with many of the other units. The comments and the feedback from the listening tours will be integrated into the thinking around the University Strategic Plan, and I will be sharing the themes that emerge from those tours. It has just been invaluable, and I'm especially heartened by all of the great work that's going on and the commitment that exists here at this university. You know that the strategic planning initiative is launched. It's critical. I really appreciate the last meeting where you engaged in this process, and we're continuing to take it out, not only on the campus, but also out to critical thought leaders in industry, in nonprofits, in school districts, and others that care about what happens to us at Cal Poly Pomona. Also in the fall, the provost will be kicking off the Academic Master Planning Initiative. You'll be hearing more about that, and we look forward to the Senate's continued engagement. Again, thanking the committee, the Senate Exec Committee, for bringing people to the table to help us think through this in more defined ways. This is a summer of much needed rest and renewal. I think we could all agree, we could all exhale a little bit this summer. It will also be a productive summer quarter with more sections and more enrollment capacity than in past years. In fact, summer registration has already exceeded the numbers for 2015. And again, much of the credit goes to the deans, the associate deans, the department chairs, and the faculty, because we are addressing the bottlenecks and in-demand courses. Graduation season is upon us. That's one of my favorite times of the year, and I have the honor of congratulating each one of the graduates on your behalf, and to acknowledge the great work of our faculty and our staff. And I am extremely proud of the contributions that this university makes to the future of our society. So I'll stop now and again see if there are any questions or comments.
Thank you, President Coley. Thank you, Provost Alba. I'm assuming you will entertain questions from the senators. Senator Coughlin.
Thank you very much for your kind words. I have a quick question about faculty lines. Are you differentiating between new hires and departments where we've lost individuals, say, to other jobs? Or is it kind of all the same pot, or is there a different priority there?
Well, I'm going to ask the provost to just respond, but at the institutional level, we're looking at, we had X number of tenure track, and then there's retirement, there's attrition. And I think what we're really looking at is at the institutional level is just trying to connect the number of positions that are needed relative to the demand. Why they left, or what were the factors contributing to their leaving, that's not something that I particularly have been looking at, but I don't know if Provost Alba wants to add anything or not.
Thank you. We have been in, as I said, deep discussion about how to assign faculty lines. We have tried to simplify the model to give a very clear message out to the colleges and to the departments, which takes into consideration two primary variables. One is growth, and the other is attrition. And so in the past, we've had a very comprehensive approach, but sometimes in that complexity, you lose the main thread. And as the president underscored, the main thread is to look at where enrollment is and where the need is to put faculty lines. So we will be looking at a combination of growth and attrition to identify where to begin to invest in new faculty lines.
Senator Schwartz.
My question is in response to the, I guess, at least as far as I'm concerned, the surprise about high-rise dormitories. So it's really a two-part question. Part one is this in response to the concerns we had about the pasture lands? And the second part is, do we have a cap with respect to residential students as opposed to commuter-type students? As you know, historically, we've been known as a commuter campus. I think we're approaching 5,000 residential students now. Do we have a strategic goal in terms of residential students? Thank you.
Great question. There was a parcel land identified for student housing. The concern was that with the original plans, that parcel of land would be, would only be available for the first phase of the build-out. So we would have had 4 or 5 buildings, I don't remember the exact makeup, but we would have had 4 or 5 buildings that would have housed the same number of students as 2 buildings. Now, when we talk about high-rise, I used to live in New York. There's high-rise and there's high-rise. And we're talking about probably, I think it's like we can't go further than 6, I don't know if it's 6 floors or 7 floors. So this isn't high-rise. But for us, it's certainly, I can see why it'd be considered high-rise. Because what I said to those who are working in student housing, if you do not have any more land available, where are you going to put the next phase of student housing? Because it's been clear that, we can't touch those horse pastures. Right? That was quite, and that's also part of the legacy of Kellogg, of what we can and cannot do for X number of years. And there's also a ratio of the number of horses to the amount of land that's needed. Everything you ever wanted to know about horses and pastures, come see me. But it has been, as a result of that we rethought how we were going to do the first phase of housing. So then there still will be land based on the identified number of acres. There'll still be land for future development in this way. So I think, does that get at your question?
Well, the second part of the question is there a cap within the strategic plan with respect to residents?
No, and I think that's going to be part of the discussion that we need to, as when we think about the campus master plan, we think about the academic master plan, we then have to look at what is our capacity. I think the last plan that was done probably about 10 years ago had taken the campus up to 20,000. Well, we're already there. And again, we recognize that the CSU is only funded based on enrollment growth. And we are hopeful that we can begin to have a dialogue about other factors that ought to be considered other than just enrollment growth. We certainly need to educate, provide access, but when you think about deferred maintenance, when you think about labs, when you think about the support, academic support infrastructure, there are other things that we aren't directly funded for, but we must also factor in. And so we haven't had that conversation yet because we're still kind of coming out of that post-recession environment and where there's been such pent-up demand. Because I think you've heard the numbers. Last year, I think we had 48,000 applications for 4,000 slots. Well, now, granted, many of these students will apply to other CSUs, but I no longer can wear my CPP president jacket because I'm constantly met by either students or parents that said, my child applied there, and either they got in, I'm excited, or they didn't get in, or they haven't heard yet. And so it's a nice challenge to have, but again, we have to be very thoughtful about the way we grow, because we have to have the infrastructure to support it. Yes.
I just wanted to know if there are any updates or strides of progress towards alleviating some of the issues that students face, in particular food insecurity, student displacement, and lack of space for undocumented students.
Yes, in fact, yesterday, I'll start with the last one. There has been a space, I think, identified. We're hiring a director for the undocumented center, student center. But one of the things that I have also noted is that a number of our offices need to have the training, because we recognize that, you know, we don't want to send students all over the place, and we don't want to give students misinformation. And there's some very prescribed set of rules and guidelines that they have to follow. And so we recognize that we have to, and I think we have about 500 or 600 students that fall into that category, and we need to bring all of the staff, all of those offices together to make sure that they're hearing the same message and knowing how to interact with them. In terms of food insecurity, that is something that we're continuing to look at, but it's becoming a system-wide initiative, and I'm very proud of what the work that is going on. I think that we actually had some staff who were involved in the system-wide survey and discussion. So that is not something that's just going to be campus-based, but it is something that we all have to look at. Yeah. Good.
Senator Holmes.
Hi there.
In hearing about the construction in Lot C and the looking forward up there on the screen, one of the things that concerns us in the trenches, as we like to call it in the academic departments, is we are close to maximum on office space, on lab space, on classroom space. I'm just wondering, as we look forward, is there anything in the system-wide queue for construction to help alleviate that on the north campus?
Well, what's happening in the system is that we are now shifting to a capital financing model, and it's going to require both the systems support as well as those campuses that have reserves, that have other resources. They will be in better position to draw down funds. But that's something that's still evolving. But one of the things that we want to do as part of our campus master planning process, this is not just about new buildings or where we're going to put X, Y, and Z, but it is about what's in our current buildings. Part of the listening tour that has been so beneficial is to see some of the conditions of the labs, and labs that certainly need to be refreshed. And we need to come together to try to figure out, are there new models of shared resources? Are there new models of using current space and creating greater access for more than just one unit? Now, there is no design or no big plan, but I think that's a kind of collective conversation that we have to have. So it's, yes, new buildings, but also current. How we're using our current resources is going to be part of that question with the master plan.
Senator Sullivan.
Yeah, going back to the growth, I was just wondering if you can shed some light about your vision into our target. What will be our target in the next 5, 10 years? And what would take us together? I mean, what do we need to do together?
It's a great question, and I'm not yet prepared, because I think it has to have a greater assessment of our current state and what going to be the parameters of the way in which we collectively say we need to grow. But I know that the current model, and I don't see it changing any soon. Some of you may have been in the Orange Book era. You know, I started in the CSU in the Orange Book era. And there, everything was tied to, if you had 5,000 students, you got 4 deans, 5 of this and 8 of that, and you had all these different calculations of the types of classes. that orange book was thrown out with the 1990 recession, and it was only about enrollment growth. And so we need to figure out, if we decide we aren't going to grow, then we also need to understand the implications of that for our current operations, because there will not be then the concomitant resources. That's why the public-private partnerships are so critical, because they help to support this. But I think we also have to have the question of, will all programs grow? Will certain programs grow and help lift all of the, so it's a important conversation. But we have to also tie growth to revenue, because until we can see that direct relationship, then it becomes something that we cannot operate. We cannot just say, well, we're going to have 10,000 more students, but we don't understand what the implications of that for faculty lines, for staff, for other kinds of support for instruction. So it's quite frankly, I look forward to this opportunity. I think you've heard me say previously that I've likened the last 5 years to being in a cave, and we've had to hunker down, and we just had to get through day by day. And now we're kind of emerging out of that cave, and we see a little light. Well, we've got multiple paths we can follow. We have to figure out which path we're going to take, what will be the implications of taking that path, but we can only do it collectively.
Senator Sheet.
I'm interested in knowing what's your vision in terms of how do we use technology to assist with that growth and to also assist with student success.
Well, let me just take the first question. The student success, I think we have to more fully integrate technology into student success, because we have to put the information in the hands of the faculty and the staff. You cannot, when you think about 23,000 students and trying to make sure that they have the correct information, what we need to be able to determine is, what are the circumstances that I need to actually sit down and connect with that student versus the circumstances that the student knows how to navigate? And we need to figure out what information they can navigate. So we've been talking about, I've constantly referred to an on-track meter. We need to be able to alert students. You're on track for the end of this academic year. You are making satisfactory progress, or in order to make satisfactory progress, these 3 things have to be done. This is where we use technology to communicate facts. We engage with the encouragement, the inspiration is where we engage one another. And I don't think that we have been able to in the past, because again, we would just hunker down to try to get through each day, but we have not incorporated and embedded technology into our day-to-day operations as much as we can. It frees us up to do other things, and technology becomes a supplement to the engagement process. Now, in terms of technology and the instructional process and so forth, I did have a listening tool with e-learning, and I think that's an area that is still left to be explored. I think that some faculty have integrated it in very direct ways, and other faculty have not yet engaged to see how it could be supplemental to what they want to achieve and not a replacement.
Senator Anmata.
With the current enrollment increase that we have been seeing, and we have seen a lot of faculty, tenured faculty retiring. How are we going to address that increase in the enrollment, and what's the plan for hiring or aggressively hiring more tenure track faculty?
Well, and I think that, as the provost mentioned, they're looking at a way to determine a process that becomes very transparent about how, who will, which departments will search, how this will take place. We also need to have a common reference point in terms of the process for searches. So because we're doing so many searches, we need to make sure that there's some consistency in the way we approach searches that are within the various colleges. But I know that the provost is working with the deans and within the colleges to have that very discussion so that so it will be very transparent because I think it's important that you know how a yes is formed or how a no is formed. I think it becomes critical.
We have time for one last question. Senator Weiner.
Hi.
Hi there.
The typical full-time teaching load under in the quarter system is 3 courses per quarter, roughly. After conversion, the typical teaching load is going to shift to 4 courses per semester. And faculty are concerned that under semester there'll be a relative increase in the teaching load and that we will have less time for scholarship. Is your administration looking into the impact that this relative increase might have and its impact on the teacher-scholar model?
Well, let me just say that I know that there was some earlier discussions on the campus about that, and 20 plus campuses our semester, and what we have recognized is the teacher-scholar model has been able to flourish. But I think that what I'm also that I also understand, having been both in semester and a quarter system, is that the way courses are distributed to faculty and how the assignments are made become very important. But in fact, one of the, and I've forgotten the analysis that was done, we had that discussion early on, but in some ways the number of units become the same, but the ability to engage with the students in a different way and the kinds of assignments actually can extend that teacher-scholar as you engage students in that in your work. So certainly, I know there will continue to be something that's on faculty's minds, but we've been able to see across the CSU system how that teacher-scholar model plays out in a semester based system. So I know that the provost will certainly, she's always been in a semester system, and I know that that'll be something we'll continue to address.
Let's thank President Coley and Provost Alba for this detailed